Today, we move products through a pipeline system that goes through Delaware County, into Chester County, through Berks, and it begins making its track across the state of Pennsylvania, heads to the west. The right-of-way, the corridor for that pipeline goes right through your county of Lebanon, okay? So we have recently been out meeting with all the townships and borough in your county, appraising them of the projects that we have going on as it relates to this line and some other activity. Sunoco has a desire. We traditionally have operated that line supplying the Pittsburgh region. It traditionally has moved gasoline, home heating fuels, kerosene, jet fuels. It is a high-pressure pipeline, and what it will do is supply that Pittsburgh region. We have recently filed a permitting application with FERC to pull out of that market and change the service on that line. That line, as I said, is an 8-inch line. It terminates in Delmont, Pennsylvania. Our desire today is to take materials off of the Marcellus Shale. Not that we are part of the shale, but there's a processing plant right outside of Pittsburgh called Houston, Pennsylvania. And we would pick materials up off of that plant and move them back through this pipeline system down to the east, where it would actually go into bulk type storage and be loaded onto ocean-going ships that would transport the vast majority of it to the Gulf Coast region.
And this is still liquid petroleum.
It is. It would become LPG-related products, liquefied petroleum gas.
Okay.
Okay. And what happens is we have been introducing this project to all the communities along the corridor. It is a change in service for this line. We ship the LPGs in a liquid form. And the way we do that is we actually add lots of pumping capacity along the way. And that's pretty much determined by the hydraulics on the line itself. In some cases, we've got those pumping stations on the wrong side of the mountain because we're used to going from the east to the west. So we've been putting in a lot of new stations along the corridor. The other thing that we do is we increase the pressure on that line. Now, leading up to that, what we have done is we have used a lot of our technologies to do testing of the line, inspection services, and those kinds of things. We will do a lot of ground probing, looking at the cathodic protection on the line. We actually send technologies through the pipeline itself called smart pigs, and we're able to take.
I'm chuckling because I learned about those when I visited Alaska.
And this, when you put the pigs through the line, it will actually give you a printout of that particular section that you put it through along the way, even to the point where it will detect little dings from maybe a backhoe that helped install it years ago. So I mean, it's that fine in terms of its detailed knowledge. So it's rare that a company gets to take that large a segment out of service at one time. It is completely out of service today. It has been cleaned, and we have evacuated all materials on it. Our next plan, therefore, is to go in and conduct maintenance along the line. And that may even lead to replacement in some sections. So what I have done is committed to all the townships and boroughs. As you can see where we operate, we visited with South Anvil, South Londonderry, West Cornwall, Cornwall Borough, South Lebanon, Heidelberg, and so they were the towns and boroughs that we have all spent time with, and I have committed to them, one, that we would keep them up to speed with the project as it proceeds and continues. Two, that we would supply them with information about integrity type digs that may occur in their township. And a lot of that requires permitting anyhow to do so, but the communication process has begun.
Now, this liquid petroleum, if you would have leakage, it does gasify, is that correct?
It does vaporize off. What happens is if you should lose containment, it does have a high expansion rate. And it would do one of two things. It would either dissipate off in open areas to the point where it would dissipate off and it would to nothing. Much like your propane grill, it wants the light off.
Mhm.
If it finds a source, it will do so, and it will go right back to the point of the loss. You know, it would be a rapid. So there is hazards associated with the material.
Is there a detection system in place if there is a leak like that?
We tend to do that along in a lot of cases, the pumping facilities and junction facilities where you have detection where your lines rise above ground. But there's a lot of metering systems and devices along the way, lots of instrumentation. One of the things that we have done is to increase or decrease the amount of line that we need to shut down. We have added significant will be adding significant valving along the way that lends to smaller areas to be shut down. And therefore, all of them are remote operated. Our central pipeline control center is located in Montella, Sinking Springs, Berks County. We are adding pumping stations along the corridor. Okay, and traditionally a pumping station generally takes several acres of ground. Not that it takes up the whole footprint, but on those, when you have pumping stations, we use pumps versus compressors. A lot of your pipelines who handle gas will use compressors to do so. We use pumps. So you have a containment building that houses the pump equipment. I call it a containment building. It's more like a structure, and it's for noise dampening effects. It has on its footprint, it also has a smaller type building that has instrumentation, all your electrical components in support of the pipeline. It has some electronics that allow you to communicate back and forth to it. And it also has, the product requires us to put in what we call ground flares. It is a self-contained container, if you will, that has an internal flame combustion to it, that if we ever have to evacuate the materials associated with the line, that would be the point that you would push it to. Okay, and what it does is incinerate the materials on there. When you're dealing with petroleum, you normally pull up a vacuum truck and you pull the materials out of the line that way. Well, this is gas, and you gotta incinerate it. So you have a container there that houses this flare system, and it has a stack that comes off the top of it. That could be what you would.
So you actually burn it off in a flare there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's there as a relief device to us in an emergency and or for maintenance. So what we'll do is we'll take a segment of line, shut it down,
Burn it off.
burn it off.
How much, you said increased pressure. How much increase in pressure?
Today the line we normally move products through that line today at about, on average, about 700 PSI. In the future, we will increase it to about 1,400 will become our new maximum operating zone.
The original pipe was rated for.
It is. We will not exceed the rating for that. Matter of fact, before they return it to service, they actually overpress. They actually exceed the maximum operating pressures of the line to do those testings and things like that. There is another component associated with that. Our goal is to perform all of this maintenance within the next 6 to 8 months and return the line in service with a target date of about 2014, mid-year. Now that's all predicated. A key component of that project is right outside of Pittsburgh. We are in the process of securing easements and right-of-ways to install a new 50-mile stretch of pipeline. And with that 50-mile stretch will actually tie into the cracking plant that will be taking the materials from, and that gets it over to our pipeline system in Delmont, Pennsylvania. So a lot of it is predicated on that activity as well. There is a second phase to that, to the Mariner East. It's what we refer to as Mariner East 2, is where we have actually commenced studies to look at the viability of an additional line in that right-of-way corridor. Not that we have come to any conclusions or come to any decisions on whether or not it's a feasible project for us or not, but we have began measures to evaluate its feasibility. Yes,
Two questions.
yes.
You said within the existing right-of-way, would all construction happen within that existing right-of-way, number one? And number two, does this line go through any of our preserved farms?
Well, the right-of-way that I've laid out on that document there, I have, would be the corridor today that they are looking at doing. Okay, so it would stay on the existing corridor through your.
Corridor, but versus right-of-way, would you have to expand your right-of-way?
It's very possible, and let me tell you why. Some of those easements date back 70, 80 plus years, okay? And in some cases, those easements will vary in width. So the typical right-of-way that we like to have is roughly 50 feet. But some of those easements and the widths associated with that agreement will fluctuate inward and outward, okay?
Can you speak up just a little?
Will fluctuate inward and out. So in other words, if your ideal scenario is 50 feet, some of them may drop down to 40, some to 30, back out to 50. So let's suppose for a moment that if we ever got to a point where we wanted to place an additional line, ideally, you want to be 20 feet roughly off of your existing line. For a couple of reasons. One is you want 360 access to that line for maintenance activities. So you don't want to be, you don't want to be too close to the other line that's already located there. So, so part of our study, the first thing that we began doing is what we call civil survey activities. And what that civil survey activity does is it actually takes from the existing center line and goes out on both sides today 100 feet in either direction. And what we do is we begin gathering information that, one, validates what we believe our right-of-way to be for us. Secondly, it grabs all environmental sensitive wetland data, habitat sensitive, we ran into in some cases, some bog turtles and things like that. So we're gathering all of that information along the way. Should we ever get into a point where we want to file permits to place such a line?
And the second part of my question was, does the existing right-of-way run through any of our preserved farms?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't at this point in time.
How would that impact it if it does? Would you have to buy those farms back?
Well, I guess it gets into, and I am not certainly knowledgeable on our easement and agreements, and would probably be better off somebody from another part of our company, our land group, our right-of-way department.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it, I think, is predicated on what the easements already look like.
Well, we have an active farmland preservation
Okay, you do.
program in place, and
Yes.
as we continue to preserve farms, I think some of these questions would be very helpful to know answers to. If we're preserving farms that don't have a chance in the future, I think we should know that. And I think the landowners would appreciate knowing that too.
Well, I think the landowners are already aware in a lot of cases, because we want to stay on the existing corridor. In some cases, we have been required to leave the existing corridor and do alternate routing. That has come up.
Alternate routing.
Alternate routing, yes. But as far as my knowledge is I have not seen anything for Lebanon County that would suggest that we want to take an alternate track. So, but that does not mean that we would not want to go increase our width of the right-of-way should we get to that point. It's very possible.
Interesting.
Does this all need to go through a PUC
It is.
process?
Yes. Yeah, we're way out in front right now. It would fall under the regulatory jurisdiction of the PUC.
So that would require hearings and advertising.
Well, this is a multi-state pipeline system that it would involve. It would begin in Ohio, venture down into West Virginia, and take a track into the Commonwealth and begin making its way down to the east of our state. Share a letter that I gave Jamie, that we have mailed to landowners along that corridor. Anytime we go on the right of way to do, or easement to do work, we notify the landowners of what we want to achieve, or want to do. In the case where we may have to do integrity digs, we meet with all the landowners up front prior to us doing any work, and there may be special considerations that need to be worked out. For example, if we need a place to locate soils and things like that, we will work it out with a local landowner. In this particular case, where we want to conduct civil surveying in support of this study, we notify the landowners in advance and let them know, and meet with them up front. And at that point in time, they have the option to state that they wish not to partake in it, or give consent, I guess I should say. But in most cases, I think we end up working it out with them to be able to proceed with the survey. But that letter basically is representative of what goes out to them.
Another question, if I
Yes.
may. The southern portion of our county is karst topography, and with all the flooding from Tropical Storm Lee and Irene before that, etc., we do have known sinkhole areas. Is that a consideration in redoing this pipeline?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. What they do is they do a lot of geological surveys as part of this survey activity. They actually take ground samples, core samples of the earth to ensure that it's suitable to place lines and things like that. In terms of the flooding, we're not too much worried about that because we do a lot of river crossings and lakes and things like that, so it tends not to be a problem in that regard, but we do a lot of soil surveying, yes.
Yeah, I was going to the explosion, should a sinkhole, make it split or whatever, somehow disrupt the integrity of the line for safety, and how close does it go to homes? What is, without having all that on this map, what is the closest this pipeline does run to homes right now?
Well, the existing one, some of them, in some cases, I don't know of examples, but they will do road crossings, and in some cases are in close proximity to the public. Any questions, John?
Does this then preclude using it to still send stuff out west? This will be a west to east now, and it was a east to west. So, or will you?
Correct.
Well, it can't go both.
No, it will not be multilateral, it'll be one direction.
This is going to be shipped out of the country, is that right?
No, the vast majority of this material goes to the Gulf Coast.
To the Gulf Coast.
Yes. It will also go overseas, and it will go to other markets throughout the United States. If we should bring online, the second phase of it, which would be an additional line, that would go. It also supports the plastic industry a lot. Your Tupperware, your materials such as that is what it goes into.
If you had to give a percentage, what percentage of the product will remain in the States and what percentage will go overseas?
I don't know that to be exact, but I'd be reluctant to say it. But I do know, I've heard at least 60% will stay in the States.
60% would stay in the States.
Correct.
Say this supports the plastics industry. Is this used to produce plastics just like petroleum products?
So the ethane material that I was speaking of is specifically used for the plastic industry. There's a number of chemical manufacturers that will take it and turn it into what they call polypropylene. And the polypropylene, they look for a grade that's what they refer to as refinery grade. It's a very higher end of material that they use for their manufacturing of plastic products, your CDs, your Tupperwares, those types of materials.
You would look to put a second line in. Would the first line again be closed down during the construction of the second line?
I will tell you, I am not an expert in pipeline installation, but I will tell you that they will go through great strides to ensure that it's safe And I am sure that may even include shutting down portions. I don't know that to be a fact though, but I could easily follow up with you on that. Committed to Jamie to make information available as we proceed through this process too, to make sure that we keep you in the loop on any progress that we're making, or if we start to reach decisions around, geez, a desire to place an additional line. We'd like to reach out to the LEPCs of your county, the emergency management folks, to work with them and provide communication forums and training forums for your first responders, so that we can provide detailed information on the line, the materials that we move through it, and have that information sharing with them as well.